When you open up the provided file on module 9.2, you're going to see these 3 layers, and they should all be locked in the version that you're downloading. What this is, if you zoom in closely, you can see that there's a layer of texture on the top of your document. If you hide that, you'll see a paper texture so that this will actually look like it's printed on a piece of paper. And at the very bottom, there is just a color fill. It makes the paper look a little bit warmer, and it'll give it a better look at the end. So what I typically do is I'll hide the top layer, and any of the layers that you're adding in, any pictures you're dropping in, should be below the top layer and above background too. That way it'll show up on the paper texture, but below this design that should be printed on top. So I already screenshotted a picture that I wanted to use from Envato Elements. I'm going to open it from my desktop. And I'm going to drag this onto the other document here. That should be fine. Remember, if your layer is unlocked, which it is, and rasterized, which it is, you can scroll down in your Properties menu and find the Remove Background button. This will automatically mask any of the background that it can see, which will save you a lot of time. If you have any pieces left like these, you can see a lot of white still through the rib cage, use your magic wand. Make sure this contiguous checkbox is not checked, so it should look like this. And then when you click on a color, it will select just that color, so all the white is selected. And I'm going to add to my layer mask by dropping in the color black. You could do this with a black paintbrush and color over the whole thing, or you can use your paint bucket shortcut, which is Option and Delete. So just like that, these ribs are cleaned up pretty nicely. All right, I'm going to slide this below the top layer. And we are going to fill this with a gradient map. So under the Adjustments menu, go to Gradient Map. Double click on the gradient, and you'll be able to see a bunch of presets, selecting the colors that you want to use. Or you can adjust them manually if you don't find colors that you like. This will work pretty well. But you can adjust each color by double clicking on these little squares at the bottom. And it should give you a preview before you press OK. So if you're not happy with it, keep moving your color picker around until you find the one that you want. Then press OK. I'm going to press OK. You'll notice that because the gradient map is above all of your other layers, it's going to affect all of the others. So we can see an orange background, but we really only want to see this gradient on the image of the rib cage. So to create a clipping mask, to clip the color just onto the layer below it, you're going to right click on the gradient map, scroll down until you see Create Clipping Mask, and click on that. All right, good. So now we have a color fill on our object. The last step is adding some texture. These are really highly textured prints, so we're going to add all of that with our filter gallery. Click on Filter in your menu. Go down to Filter Gallery. If you click on the one at the top, it just uses the last effects that you applied, so always go down to the one that's a little further down your menu. So the first thing that we're going to do, let me make sure I have the right layer selected. I don't. Make sure you're on the photo layer. And it's helpful if you make your foreground color black and your background color white. This will show enough contrast in the filter menu. There we go. So we are going to add 2 effects to our designs. The first effect that we're going to add is a halftone pattern. Halftones are the kind of inking that you see in comic books, all the small dots. And you can make this design as large or as small as you'd like. You'll have more details with smaller dots, and you'll have less detail with larger dots. Don't go this large, it blurs it, but just to show you the difference, I'm going to go maybe around 2 or 3. That should be fine. And you're also going to add an artistic category filter called Film Grain. To add 2 filters at the same time, once you have one created, at the very bottom, click the plus, it'll add a new effect. You can select it from these menus on the left, or you can select from this drop down. I'm going to go to Film Grain and just add a little bit of graininess. You can adjust this as needed. Every picture will probably need different settings, so just find one that looks right to you. And I'm going to press OK. So now We have our color fill, we have some nice texture going on. If I show the top layer, you get even more texture over this. And the very last step we want to do is change the blending mode on this image. The blending modes are up here. It usually says normal by default. So we're going to click this drop down and go to multiply. And that will give us a nice overlay effect when we add other images in. So you're just going to repeat this step over and over with all the images that you're using. You can add any amount of green, any amount of halftones until you have a risograph created.